Hello, friends. My sermon today comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15, verse 1 through 20. And I'm reading to you from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. It says, "Then Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, 'Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands before they eat.' He answered them, 'And why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, honor your father and mother, and whoever speaks evil of father or mother must surely die. But you say that whoever tells father or mother, whatever support you might have had from me is given to God, then that person need not honor the father. So for the sake of your tradition, you make void the word of God. You hypocrites! Isaiah prophesied rightly about you when he said, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines.' Then he called the crowd to him and said to them, 'Listen and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but it is what comes out of the mouth that defiles.' Then the disciples approached him and said, 'Do you know that the Pharisees took offense when they heard what you said?' He answered, 'Every plant that God does not plant will be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind guides of the blind. And if one blind person guides another, both will fall into a pit.' But Peter said to him, 'Explain this parable to us.' Then he said, 'Are you also without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth enters the stomach and goes into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this is what defiles. For out of the heart comes evil intentions, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile." In this Bible text, Jesus finds himself in an interesting debate. And that debate is clean versus unclean. The debate begins with the Pharisees coming up from Jerusalem, the headquarters, to question why the disciples were breaking their tradition. They were not washing their hands before they ate. This was a tradition of the Pharisees in the first century. For them, washing hands was not only about hygiene, but was also a ritual of purity. Not all Jewish people subscribed to this tradition. The Pharisees were a group within Judaism. Think about them like a denomination with their own beliefs and traditions in the first century. So what was the big deal about hand washing? Author Michael Mark says, "This was not an ordinary washing of hands. This was a ceremonial washing of hands. Washing required using naturally pure water without color or impurities. This was done so frequently that special jars, often large jars, kept water for the ceremony. The water would be scooped up in a cup and poured on each hand, one at a time. The hand needed to be lifted so that the water would run down to the wrist, so that the water polluted by the hands would not run down to the fingers. If any water did not go past the wrist, the hand would be considered unclean. Then you repeated for the other hand, and that hand was then rubbed with the hand that was first cleansed. Water was poured on each hand at least twice, and the people did this before and after meals. You would recall that Jesus had many conversations and debates with the Pharisees in the Gospels. Here in Matthew chapter 15, he is responding to the Pharisees and their standards of purity. The argument Jesus makes is this: eating with dirty or impure hands does not make the food unclean. Instead, it's what comes out of the mouth that's unclean. This angered the Pharisees because he was basically throwing their traditions out the window, and they were trying to maintain their traditions. But Jesus presents a very practical alternative. He says, "Do you see that whatever goes into the mouth enters the stomach and then goes out into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and that's what defiles. For out of the heart comes evil intentions, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, and slander. These are what defile a person, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a person." The images of mouth, stomach, and sewer sound like a lesson in the digestive system. But what it means is that whatever goes into our bodies is excreted and gone and does not have the potential to defile. In other words, to violate or harm anyone. On the other hand, the things that come out of the mouth, the things that emerge from within us, like our words, have the potential to harm others. The things which come out of our hearts, evil intentions, wanting to deliberately cause harm to others, murder, to take another person's life, adultery, when a married person has an intimate relationship with another person, fornication, which in the New Testament Greek means sexual relations with a prostitute, theft, to take something that someone else owns, false witness means perjury, and slander, making a false statement to intentionally ruin a person's reputation. These acts, which come from our hearts and our mouths, have the potential to destroy people's lives and cause irreparable harm to others as well as ourselves. This Bible text is challenging us to live a principled life, one based on honesty, decency, fairness, and to be humane. The Pharisees were very adamant about their traditions and their rituals, and sometimes they missed the point. Sometimes these traditions and rituals got in the way of living a principled life. They were very caught up with the external. Today, we may not be arguing about hand washing as a purity tradition, but we are arguing about external matters. A lot of Christian denominations and other religious institutions are very good with words. They use words like welcoming, inviting, affirming to describe themselves. They paint an external portrait of themselves as accepting everyone. But internally, that's not the reality. We invite people to come as they are, and then we've got these unwritten traditions that we subscribe to. You know the ones I'm talking about. We don't like blue jeans in Sunday worship. Some dresses are too short or too tight, or she has too many tattoos to help with the music ministry, or he has too many piercings to lead the prayer group. We're always trying to fit people into how we think a religious person should look and how they should present themselves, what we think purity is. Do we really believe that ink on a person's skin makes them impure? Or is it their words and their actions? I get it. We're uncomfortable with things we don't understand. And there are things we may not approve of based on what we were taught was right and wrong. I get it. We're uncomfortable with the things we don't understand. And there are things we may not approve of based on what we were taught was right or wrong. But religion is not about making clones. God is not preoccupied with the external, pearls or blue jeans. It's how we treat one another. It's living a good and decent life, an honest life. It's not what we wear on our bodies, but what comes from the heart through our mouth that matters to God. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of the Lord abides forever. Have a blessed and wonderful day. Goodbye for now.